Everybody joining me today on the show. You guys thought we were not going to have my guy Matt Lowe on to pick games every week. We just had to let a few weeks go, let everything marinate. Let's see how these teams are looking in a few weeks. But Matt Lowe, you check out all his written work over at Field Level Media. And Matt, it's good to talk to you. Good to see you. We talked a lot, off the air, but glad to have you on. Glad to be doing these previews once again.
Yeah, man, it's always a pleasure to talk with you, man. We've had some good talks over the years, and it's been a crazy start to the season so far. So let's rock and roll, man.
I think last year the highlight of it was every week we were talking about Lane Kiffin Auburn, and then it ended up being Hugh Freeze going to Auburn because I do remember that it was a fun time last year because I feel like we opened every episode talking about the latest rumors at Auburn.
Yeah, and I actually think that might have come down to a family decision, with uh, with his kids. But yeah, I mean, so ultimately the Auburn got Freeze, and I think he's done a good job, and I think he's doing a really good job recruiting. And
Mhm.
with the new facility they have there, it's all lined up for them to really build something big. So we'll see what happens, this week when we jump into SEC play, how good these guys are. But they're playing well so far.
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously it's our first time doing it, and people's heard my takes left and right these last couple weeks as the season's gone on. But Matt, what have been some things that have stood out to you so far in the first few weeks of college football season?
Well, the unpredictability. I think, now with so much turnover on rosters each season, it's hard to know what a team's got or know how good they are because there's so much turnover. And you can't just turn over 50% of your team and go out there and play and be clicking on all cylinders. I don't think it works that way. Now, if you got a veteran team and you're keeping players in the program, I think that's different. I mean, you see like Florida State, I mean, they pretty much had a lot of their guys back and they've jumped out quickly. And uh, uh so it's really tough to say like preseason wise who's going to be this or that because there's so much turnover and you don't really know. I mean, and you don't know if a quarterback comes in over here and he doesn't gel with the team. We don't see that kind of stuff behind the scenes, but the coaches do, and you just have to go out and play. And I think that's the one of the biggest challenges for us media wise too is keeping up with all the movement, keeping up with all the new players. Is this guy's over here? Well, he played there for 2 years. It's tough to keep up with. It's hard, and it's going to be like this from here on out, unfortunately, unless certain programs can just build from within. And it's also harder on the fans. You don't have a guy that's in your on your team for 4 years that you grow up. Oh well, he redshirted here. What's he doing here? And now he's a sophomore, and so it's different for all of us, and it's just something we got to get used to because it doesn't look like there's no turning back with it. But that's been a thing. I think that Deion Sanders at Colorado, and look, Deion's always been brash and outspoken and cocky, but he can back it up, and he backed it up as a player. So I always tell the kids that I coach and my son, I mean, I try to tell them, hey, don't be cocky. You let you play on the field, do talking, but he's his own character, and right now he's a marketing machine.
Mm.
And that's only going to help Colorado move forward. And how long he stays there, I don't know. But that's one thing. When Auburn was looking for a coach and Deion Sanders' name came up, I was like, that's interesting because I mean the guy's on commercials every other 5 minutes now. He's got the cowboy hat on, got the shades. But I tell you what about his team, they play hard
Mhm.
and fast, and what he's done in that short amount of time with that team is pretty remarkable. And how they'll do, on down the road, I don't know. They play Oregon this weekend. I think they'll probably lose that game, but as far as the future of the Colorado program goes, it's pretty remarkable where they're heading and how, like I said, he's just a marketing machine. And I think probably another thing that stood out to me is the slow start from Alabama, but they just this is just my opinion. It doesn't look like Alabama 4 or 5 years ago,
Mm-mm.
and they don't seem to me like they have the edge they used to. Alabama used to walk off the bus and walk on the field, and teams were just scared of them. I mean, like they're big, they're strong, they're mean, they're physical, and had 10 penalties against Texas, 5 last week. Uh, I don't see the kind of dynamic talent at receiver that we saw over the years there. And I'm not saying that the dynasty's over or anything like that. They just don't look to me like the program that they were 5 or 6 years ago. And that's been kind of a shocker to me.
Yeah, and for them, and the quarterback stuff has been one thing, but man, they cannot pass protect. I mean, their offensive line is horrible in pass protection.
Yeah, and that's surprising,
Mm-hmm.
and last week they really couldn't run that great either. I mean, of course, the weather I think had something to do with it, but you mentioned Milroe. I thought the move to pull him and bench him was interesting after Texas, just because Texas's defensive line is a bunch of grown men.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that D line is nasty, and he with a young quarterback that hadn't started and played a lot, they're going to make mistakes. It's just all there is to it. I mean, Peyton Manning made mistakes. I mean, Tom Brady made mistakes. I mean, like good quarterbacks are going to make mistakes, and I think you got to understand that and say, hey, we got to clean this up next time. But it also brought up something up to me. It's something going on with Milroe, behind closed doors that we don't know anything about, because I just thought that was a weird move by Saban to bench him after that game when they were in the game, and he threw a couple of beautiful deep balls,
Mm-hmm.
and so that was just, I don't know, and that Tyler Buckner kid, when he came in, like he looked scared to death. I
I
mean,
mean,
and
he couldn't accurately throw a screen pass.
no, and he just looked wide eyed. He looked scared, and
Mm-hmm.
like you can't play football scared. I mean, that's just
Mm-mm.
all there is to it. And then, of course, they go to Simpson, and he didn't play that bad, but I mean, I don't know. That's just an interesting dynamic there at quarterback for me at Alabama, and we'll see where they go. But I also think too that Tommy Reese. I mean, you got a guy like Milroe, you need to run him.
Mm-hmm.
Let him do his thing. I mean, kind of like Lamar Jackson, kind of like Jalen Hurts. I mean, you got a guy that can run like he can. You got to let them do their thing. That's just all there is to it.
Yeah, to me, and I agree with you. He gives them the best chance to be successful offensively than the other two, just because of that element he brings. The other two, I wouldn't. They're not statues, but you pretty much, you're not as fearful about them taking off if everything breaks down. Let's look at some of these games for this weekend. Week 4 is interesting. I think we finally kind of getting some better games, than we have gotten the first few weeks. And I'll start off Auburn at Texas A&M. Obviously, this is going to be interesting at 11 o'clock on ESPN. Texas A&M, they are a 7.5-point favorite. But Matt, Auburn has actually been pretty successful at College Station since the Aggies came into the SEC. I think Auburn's only lost there maybe once or twice in that time. What are your thoughts on this game?
Well, I think the number one thing Auburn has got to do better is take care of the ball.
Mm-hmm.
I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
I think if they would have done that, I mean, they're ranked 112th nationally in turnovers right now. I think 4 lost fumbles, 3 interceptions. You look at that game out at Cal, I think that cost them kind of putting that game away. I mean, they, with Keontae Scott out at cornerback, uh, the punt return situation has been terrible. I mean, guys are dropping the ball, they're fumbling. That's got to get cleaned up. Uh, I think Peyton Thorne, I think early on, rotating him and Robbie Ashford in and out, I think that kind of messed with Peyton's rhythm a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
I'm of the opinion that you need to let a guy play if he's a start quarterback. Yeah, bring Ashford in packages, but I'm not a fan of putting a guy in on first and second down and putting the other guy in on third down when it's 3rd and 10. I mean, that's not really fair to them, and it just, you can't get into a rhythm. I think Auburn's got to get Jarquez Hunter going too in the run game. I don't know what's going on with him. But you look at Texas A&M. I think Auburn's defense, they're playing great defensively. I mean,
Oh yeah.
I'll say this: Ron Roberts, he's a good coordinator. I mean, the
Mm-hmm.
adjustments that he's made. I'm not so sure if Nehemiah Pritchett's going to play this weekend. He's been out the first 3 games, but Eugene Asante has been an animal at linebacker. Donovan Kaufman, I like the way that he's been used, at that star spot. But Roberts has really impressed me with his play calling, and Auburn's defense is sound. And they play really hard. They fly to the ball. But conversely, with A&M, Connor Wegman, he's really been throwing the ball good. Evan Stewart's a dynamic wideout. So is Aeneas Smith. I think Stewart's questionable for the game. They held him out last weekend, so against La Monroe. But I mean, if Miami can run all over A&M's defense, that was surprising to me how much Miami ran through them.
Me too.
And so I don't know what A&M's got there because they've recruited so well on that side of the ball. It's just that was really shocking to me. But if Texas A&M plays defense the way they did against Miami, I think Auburn goes in there and gets a win. I really do.
Yeah, and I was thinking, I watched that game. I was texting with a friend of mine. I said, well, good, bad news. The A&M offense has been fixed, but the defense just got worse. Because last year, the problem was their offense was so bad. But, you're right. And I'm with you 100% on the quarterback deal with Auburn. I was like, okay, you are rotating them out a little bit too much. And especially there was a couple times in the Cal game. 3rd down, let's go send Peyton Thorne out there to get the first down on. He couldn't get a rhythm. And I think with me too about this whole thing was too, look, he wasn't there during the spring. He's still getting to know these wide receivers. He needs the reps. He needs to get acclimated still with the offense and the receivers. That was not doing him any favors. So I like the way, bring Robbie Ashford maybe on the goal line or something, and bring him in certain packages. Maybe you run some trick plays. But you do need to ride with Peyton Thorne. And then we saw, I know a lot of people say at Sanford, but we saw that he can run it too. So you might not need Robbie Ashford that much to be in the quarterback run game.
Yeah, and he threw for over 200 yards and ran for over 100. And that was the first quarterback to do that at Auburn since Nick Marshall.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, he was a pretty good cat, back there, quarterback for Auburn. So, yeah, I mean, I do. And you saw last week a little bit. Of course, they're playing Sanford, so can't get carried away there. But, I mean, the passing game got cranked up a little bit. And Auburn's going to have that moving forward down the road.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, the receivers are going to step up their game. I'm going to pick A&M with this one. I think it's a close game. It's very close because just imagine if A&M loses this one. They're 2-2. Jimbo Fisher, Bobby Petrino. Well, at least I guess if they could get rid of Jimbo during the season, they've got an automatic interim head coach in place. But
true,
it's going to get bad if A&M loses this one at home and it's 2-2.
Yeah, real bad, especially the amount of money they're paying him.
Oh yeah, exactly.
I don't know what is his buyout, like $20 million.
It was 90 something last year. I'm sure it's dropped this season. I don't have the number in front of me. It's got to be somewhere in the 80s. But I mean, at what point do you just say, hey, A&M, if this thing doesn't go? I mean, what's the win total he needs this year to kind of get some pressure off of him? You think maybe 8?
I would say more than that. I would say more like 10.
Yeah.
I mean,
so we'll see. We'll see how Saturday goes. We'll have something bright and early to kick off with this stuff with this one. And here's another one at 11 o'clock. Florida State is playing at Clemson, 11 a.m. ABC. Florida State, they are just a 2-point favorite going into Clemson. We saw Clemson play the opening weekend. Duke just ran through them. And then the last couple of weeks, Charleston Southern, they beat them 66-17, and they beat Florida Atlantic 48-14. So they've beaten up on some teams they should be beaten up on. With Florida State, they look like they slept walk a little bit last week with that very close win over Boston College. But man, Florida State's got so many players. I mean, when you look at what they have at running back, quarterback Jordan Travis, receivers with Wilson, Coleman come from Michigan State, defensively on the defense line, just starting with Jared Verse. Here's my thing with Clemson. I think Cade Klovett's an okay quarterback. Will Shipley is their offense. I don't think they've got the receiver position is actually what concerns me a lot with Clemson. Man, I don't think they have the guys on the team to actually keep up with Florida State. I think Florida State's going there and getting a win.
I agree with you. And I tell you what, that Duke team, Mike Elko, what surprised me in that game when they played Clemson is they out physicaled them. And Riley Leonard, Alabama kid, I mean, he's a heck of a player, Phillip. I mean, you talk about a guy that I saw him do a 360 dunk. He was a really good basketball player, but what a find they got in him. But I was just shocked by how Duke just manhandled him. And I think Florida State might have been sleeping a little bit when they went to Boston College last weekend. And once again, a head coach trying to get 2 points instead of kicking extra points. And they lose by 2 points. You know, I did that for the life of me. I just don't. It's like I don't get the analytics stuff. The analytics. I mean, you drive down the field, you get to the 20-yard line, and it's 4th and 3, and you go for it because the analytics tell you so. I mean, just kick a field goal and get points. But I'm with you. I think FSU looks kind of like FSU used to. A lot of NFL talent. You know, Mike Norvell is a great offensive mind too. So I like them to go. I'm with you. I think it's going to be a tight game, though. I think it'll be a high-scoring game, like 31-28, something like that.
You know, since the ACC doesn't have divisions, I mean, I'm pretty confident. Maybe North Carolina could rise up. Maybe that's the other team in the ACC. But I really feel like this is the first of 2 matchups between these two this year.
You're probably right. Yeah, but that North Carolina team now with Drake May and that they got a pretty good defense too. So that Drake May kid, he's a player.
Yeah,
he's a really good player.
Yeah, him and Caleb Williams. We will enjoy them college football fans because they're going to be in the NFL next year. That's your top 2 right now. Would be a top 2 players probably taken in the draft. Talk about the Troy Trojans. In our state here, they'll be playing Western Kentucky. Western Kentucky's coming to Troy. They're 2-1. Troy is 1-2, but they were 1-2 last year, and then they didn't lose another game. So just gonna throw it out there. This is 11 a.m. ESPNU. Troy is a 3.5-point favorite. Troy had negative 12 rushing yards last week against James Madison, and I think a lot of that was Gunnar Watson getting sacked 6 times for minus 44 yards. They didn't really run the ball well with Kamani Vidal either. He only had like 27 yards in the game. And then going against a quarterback in Austin Reed, which, you know, he was mentioned with a lot of different schools and maybe transferring. He didn't. He stayed at Western Kentucky. So it's going to be interesting kind of testing out that Troy defense. I think Troy's going to come in this thing, and Coach Sumrall has said it this week, we need to run the ball more with Kamani Vidal. I think they're going to do that. Man, I'm being a homer. Like I'll let the cat out of the bag. I am a student. I am going to Troy University, but I'm going to go with the Trojans. I think they're going to turn around. I think John Sumrall is going to kind of get their attention this week and turn around. And they beat this team last year on the road, so I think they'll do it again.
Well, Troy's problem is his offensive line. I think they lost 3 starters from last year's team. And look, man, when you can't even get 1 yard against James Madison. I mean, I don't know how good James Madison is, but I don't know. That's a big problem area for Troy right now. I mean, you talking about they got veteran skill guys all over the place. And I think, too, the loss of Carlton Marshall is big for them on defense. But, I mean, Austin Reed is a good player. Western Kentucky, I was impressed with Western Kentucky last year. I think they get the win. I like Western Kentucky, and if anything, I will take the points right there because I just don't like the way Troy's playing right now. But they still have a lot in front of them. They still can win the Sun Belt and do all that. But I just don't like the way they're playing right now. So I'm gonna go with Western Kentucky.
I think with Troy, if the game gets put on Gunnar Watson's shoulders, that's not a good thing.
Not with that line in front of him. No, I mean, and look, we're seeing this, and I know people always point the finger at quarterbacks, but the quarterback can't play when he's on his back or he's got. I mean, like Milroe the other week, he got pressured like 20 times. That's a. I mean, I remember a couple of years ago in the Super Bowl with Kansas City, when Mahomes and their offensive line was banged up and they went against Tampa Bay. He ran for over 400 yards in the backfield that game. There was a stat. I mean, that's the best quarterback in the world. So I don't care how good you are if you don't have a line in front of you. It doesn't really matter.
It doesn't. And I remember that. There were so many passes he still almost completed.
Yeah, he run around and spin this way and spin back that way and throw it down the field. And it was an incredible performance by him. I mean, but yeah, I mean, that Tampa Bay defensive front just got after him. And that's the same way it goes in college, too. If you can't block people, then it doesn't matter.
Yeah, it all starts up front in the offensive line. We mostly stick in the Southeast when we do this, but we mentioned Colorado earlier. Kind of got your thoughts. I think they're okay. Hopefully, anybody watching this probably get mad at me like they did on X or Twitter on Saturday night. I think Colorado's overhyped. I think Dion's done a good job at that. But I also think that, okay, you're about to step up in weight class and you won't have Travis Hunter. You're playing Oregon. What do you look at this matchup? Oregon's a 21-point favorite, too. This will be on ABC. This is 2:30 Central Time. Who you liking on this one?
Well, I like Oregon. I'm kind of with you. Look, Colorado State, I watched that game from about start to finish. Colorado State kind of out physical Colorado. They were fired up. They played well, and they probably shouldn't have lost that game. But I will say this: Shadur Sanders is a heck of a player.
Yeah, he is.
And he's a good player and Colorado plays hard. They got a lot of speed. But I think Oregon's going to be too much, especially out in Eugene. I mean, and Bo Nix. I mean, here Bo Nix out there posting up big numbers again. I mean, that's a guy that, Auburn might have made a mistake by letting him get away. But I like the Ducks. That's a big spread, though. I don't know if they'll cover that, but Oregon's been pretty good about covering spreads out there. So I'll go Oregon, and I'll say probably about 2 touchdowns.
Then the following week, Colorado has to play USC, but that's going to be a early kickoff. I think I saw they're going to play super early when they play USC the next week.
Where's that at?
I believe that one's in Colorado.
Yeah. I mean, look, they beat Nebraska, beat Colorado State. I think TCU that was a shocker to me. I don't know if TCU might have just overlooked them or what, but Nebraska's not any good. Colorado State, I don't know. That was a good game last weekend, but I think, yeah, you could play Oregon now, USC. There's about to be an uptick in competition.
Yeah, that is going to be. I just pulled it up. That is in Colorado. That will be an 11 a.m. Central Time kickoff, which means for USC that is 9 a.m. their time.
Tricky games, and hey, look, if you've ever been out on the West Coast, it's weird. I mean, I've been out there a couple of times, and when Monday Night Football is on at like 3 p.m, it's just it's weird. I mean, it takes a little bit of adjusting to deal with.
So now let's talk about the 2:30 CBS game. That is number 15 Ole Miss, who's 3-0 at number 13 Alabama, who's 2-1. First time Alabama has been outside the top 10 since 2015. Alabama, though, is a 6.5-point favorite. Milroe will start this one. Matt, I'm going to let you start this one off.
Well, I think that's the right move to go back with Milroe. I would have probably pulled the trigger on that in the the first quarter of last week's game when I saw that Bushner guy play. I mean, I was like, man, I texted a bunch of my buddies and I was like, man, this guy looks lost. I mean, just basic passes, he can't even connect. But I think that was the right move. Ole Miss is kind of banged up. Their top wide receiver didn't play with a knee injury, Trey Harris, but Jackson Dart has really been playing at a high level. I think Ole Miss is really good on the offensive and defensive lines. I know J.J. Pegues, who was a former Auburn player, has really upped his game there on the defensive line for Ole Miss. Quinshon Judkins, he hadn't really gotten going the way we know he can get going yet, but they got a kid, Ulysses Bentley, the fourth. He averaged 10 yards per carry last weekend. He's fast. So I like Ole Miss's running game, and I like them, being at home. And I think they get the W. Actually, they're on the road. They're at Alabama. So I still think Ole Miss goes in there and gets it done.
Okay, I feel like this is like a game day moment.
I thought that was in Oxford for some reason. My bad.
So I usually do this to you about once an episode when we do this. Not so fast, my friend. I am going to go with the Crimson Tide. I have told people, look, I have no reason to say this or believe this from what we've seen on the field, but I've seen this. We've all seen this story before. Alabama's being, talked about like, oh, it's over. Saban's lost the team, or the team's not as good as they once were, and then boom, we watched this team on Saturday and they just blow past somebody. I do not think they blow past Ole Miss. I think this is going to be a competitive game. I don't think Alabama can do that to a team like Ole Miss this year. But I think Alabama's going to come out to make a point. I think they're going to Milroe's going to have a big game. I think Alabama's going to remind everybody that they're still Alabama. I'm going to go with Alabama to win this one. And another thing, everybody that knows me knows I'm not the biggest guy when it comes to Jackson Dart. I think when the game gets put on his shoulder, he kind of falls apart. And they kind of got pushed around against Tulane a few weeks ago. And if Michael Pratt plays in that game, I think Tulane beats them a few weeks ago. So I've not been overly impressed with the physicality of Ole Miss. And I think Alabama beats them and pulls away late in the fourth quarter.
I will say this about Tulane. That's a good football team.
Mm-hmm.
And that Pratt guy, I kind of agree with you there. But Tulane's offense and defensive lines are no joke. And, I mean, they won, double-digit wins last year. I mean, so what a job by Fritz. I mean, what a job. I mean, I think if a big job opens up, he might be a big-time candidate. But, yeah, that was a heck of a ball game. But, yeah, you're probably right there with Bama. I mean, everybody's kind of giving up on him. The dynasty's over. Saban should retire and all this other stuff. But I think this is interesting to see what kind of coaching job Saban can do with this team from here on out, though, and you got two new coordinators too. I mean, Kevin Steele, one thing about Kevin Steele, and I'll say this, he plays a lot of man-to-man. Now, I don't know if Saban puts the, crutches on him and says, hey, we're not doing that as much, but I know when he was at Auburn, they played a lot of man-to-man. When you're playing that kind of defense, there's a lot of things that can go wrong. So keep an eye on that moving forward with the way this Alabama secondary is.
Yeah, look, they got beat a few times against Texas. I mean,
good receivers too, by the way.
Yeah, really good team, but they still, there were some holes in the defense of that one. Arkansas at LSU. Both teams are 2-1, but it feels like two teams going in opposite directions already. Arkansas with that loss against BYU this past Saturday, and LSU just dominated against Mississippi State. And really, you looked at how LSU's, which one was Grambling then Mississippi State? I mean, how good does that Florida State win over them? Look, when LSU put a performance that they did last week, LSU's favored by 17.5 here. I mean, when you look at Arkansas, I think offensively they're all about KJ Jefferson. The defense is still an issue like it was last year. And I just think LSU, to me, they might be right now the most impressive team in the conference. Georgia's had some struggles. Obviously, we just talked about Alabama. I think LSU is going to roll in this one.
Well, I will say this. Arkansas last week, they had 14 penalties. 14 penalties, 2 of 13 on third down. They basically outclassed BYU in every statistical category but those two. And, Rocket Sanders being out is a big loss for Arkansas, man, because not only is he a good running back, he runs hard, but him and KJ work so well together, on that zone read play. I think the LSU game when they played Florida State, I think that game kind of got away from them, and just the punt fumble then FSU scores, and I just think the momentum kind of shifted and FSU got on a roll. I still think LSU is a really good football team, but this is a rivalry game. These two teams do not like each other. I think that's a big line. I will say this about Jaden Daniels. I mean, here comes another LSU receiver just blowing out and putting up huge numbers in Malik Neighbors. I mean, 12 catches for 233 yards last week. When LSU played FSU in the opener, I didn't like how they were using Harold Perkins.
I didn't either. made no sense.
outstanding outside linebacker who's a terrific pass rusher, and he was dropping into coverage. I mean, like, dude, that's like dropping Lawrence Taylor into coverage. I mean, he just I don't understand that. I mean, I get
I
trying to
didn't
trick
either.
people. I get trying to trick people and all that, and then catch somebody off guard with zone dogs and all that. But I just Matt House. I mean, he was a really good coordinator with the Chiefs, and he likes to attack. So I think they need to let Harold play the way he played last year. And so I think this will be a high scoring game. I'm leaning like something like 38-30, something like that, 38-30 LSU.
Yeah, you know, and with LSU too, I think their secondary is where the weakness is on the team, and and with Harold Perkins, I didn't understand that. I mean, because there's a lot of plays. I mean, he may have not got to Jordan Travis, but he would have rushed to throw. And just a little bit, I watched him play Mississippi State. I mean, you saw a couple of times Will Rogers saw him coming, and it
Oh
was
yeah.
like, okay, I got to get the ball out quicker. And then obviously most of those ended up in incompletion. So I mean, he just changes the game. I mean,
Hmm.
I look at him, you know, the Cowboys, Micah Parsons. That's who he
Ooh.
reminds me of. That's what he is. To me, that's what he is. I mean, he's a backfield disruptor.
Yes, and like that guy uh for the Cowboys, I mean, geez, he's having an incredible year. I mean, and the way he's used in that defense, you know, they move him all around. Heck, he lined up over the center the other day and just knocked the center down and sacked the quarterback. I mean, it's just incredible. But I think that's what it goes back to running quarterbacks, like guys that are real athletic. I mean, let them play, let them use their talents. I think that's what good football coaches do is they get the best out of their players. They see what they can do best, and they let them go do it. And LSU's defensive front, Mekhi Wingo up front, he's pretty nasty too. So
Mm-hmm.
they
Oh yeah.
got some serious talent. I just like I said, I think that FSU got away from them, and I still think LSU is going to be there in the end.
Yeah, I do too. I'm still sticking with my SEC West pick over Alabama with LSU. I wavered a little bit after the FSU game, but then after I got to look at Alabama, I was like, yeah, I'm going back to LSU on that one.
Well, they lost to him last year too, you know.
Yeah, so you know, but you know, it kind of I guess a theme with Brian Kelly, and you lose to Florida State first, and then I win SEC West. You know, that's kind of maybe how he has to do it. Last game we'll talk about. This is, I think, an under the radar SEC game. 2-1 Mississippi State at 1-2 South Carolina. South Carolina's a 6.5 point favorite. This is 6:30 p.m. kickoff on the SEC Network, and this is a must win, I think, for both of them because for Mississippi State, new head coach, they're running a new offense. You can drop to 2-2. I think, you know, I had this team pick last in the SEC West just because I don't like the change of the off. I was kind of hoping they would run something more of what Mike Leach run. It's not Mike Leach calling it. Obviously, you know, it's not the same as him. But still run something with his run and shoot, his air raid. And it was South Carolina. They've played well in some games, but look, they got losses against North Carolina and Georgia. They need a win outside of what they've already got one at. So I think South Carolina's going to win this one. I just think better coach, better quarterback with Beamer and Rattler, and they can't drop to 1-3.
Oh, you're right. And South Carolina played well last weekend against Georgia, which I didn't get a chance to see that game because it was blocked out due to the contract issues with my cable company. But here's the thing with Mississippi State. I think they're built to throw the football. And Zach Arnett is trying to mold them into this power running team. So you're having a contradictory of styles there, you know, and Will Rogers, to me, is one of the best quarterbacks in the country. And I don't think it goes back to what we were talking about with Perkins and these running court play into a kid's talent, you know. And I think, you know, you want to be this power running team, but then you get down by 14 or 17 points, and then you expect him to be able to throw the ball all over the place. It doesn't work that way, you know, because now when you're down that much, the defense is pinning their ears back and they're coming after you, you know, and you got guys like Perkins and Wingo coming after you and hitting you and sacking you. So, yeah, must win game for both of them pretty much. I mean, but I'm with you. I'll go with South Carolina. I thought they got some things on track last week, even though they lost to Georgia. Uh, I think I like Rattler, and it's a home crowd. It's going to be crazy off the hook setting there, and so I'm going to go with you. I like South Carolina.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. It's going to be a interesting game. Interesting weekend of college football. I think this is the best one we've had so far going in. So it's going to be a fun weekend. Matt, before we get out of here, tell everybody where can they check out your work over there at Field Level Media?
Yeah, just click on fieldlevelmedia.com. I'm covering Auburn, and I did a preview for Georgia. I'm doing a lot of the Atlanta Falcons stuff. So if you see that, Field Level is a content producing machine. So they have all kind of previews of any kind of MLB, college football, NFL. They have betting stuff up there. They cover golf, hockey, basketball. They cover everything. So getting in with those guys, and it's a young up and coming company, and I'm happy to be with them. And it's going well right now. So yeah, fieldlevelmedia.com. If you see Atlanta Falcons stuff, see Auburn stuff, see Georgia Bulldogs, that's going to be me. So it's a good deal right now.
All right, everybody, go check out Field Level Media. And Matt, this is fun. I'm glad we're doing this again. We'll do this again next week. I'm going to give the listeners an idea of what the different location we'll be doing this from next week, though. But as always, Matt, I appreciate you taking the time and coming on the show and doing these previews.
Hey, anytime, Phillip. Look, let's the race to see who can pick the SEC the best.
There we go.